Buddy Hanson from Facebook says, for individuals like Chelsea who are in a position of intel, what channel or procedure is available to them from government or the military concerning whistleblowing? In other words, do government employees have formal options within their established agencies specifically for disclosing important information to the public?
I mean, in theory they do, but in reality they don't. We had this question all the time in the Snowden context. Snowden discovered that there was a system of mass surveillance that had been erected. And for the most part, the scandal was not that it was illegal. The scandal was that it was more or less legal, that the U.S. government had found a way to do it legally. It's just that the public didn't know about it. So imagine if he had gone to his supervisors or to Congress, like Dianne Feinstein, and said, oh, I want you to know I have these documents that show that the system of mass surveillance had been erected. They would have said, no kidding, asshole, and picked up the phone and called the FBI and reported him, which is what they've done a lot to a lot of whistleblowers. Whistleblowers come forward about secret programs, and then they end up having law enforcement stuck on them. So, imagine if you're Chelsea Manning in the middle of Iraq and you discover what all of her supervisors already well knew, which is that the U.S. military was indiscriminately killing civilians. They were detaining Iraqis, not for crimes, but for political dissent. They were enabling corrupt factions, all the things she saw that they already knew of. And she went to her supervisor in the military and said, oh, I'm very concerned about this. They would have, probably busted her down to a lower rank and maybe discharged her and put her in a court-martial. So in theory, people do have whistleblowing protections, but in practice, when it comes to things that everybody in government knows about and has decided they're okay with, but the public doesn't know, your only real alternative to have any kind of meaningful whistleblowing is to go to media outlets that will ensure that this information gets to the public and a debate can actually be triggered, as both Snowden and Manning were able to do.
Yeah, and the Intercept, if I'm not mistaken, the Intercept now has an outlet, a method with which people can contact them with whistleblowing information. Do you have any information on that handy?
Yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, this was one of the principal objectives, one of our core missions when we formed the Intercept was to provide avenues for sources to contact us safely. In a world where there's mass surveillance, where the government tracks everyone who's talking to everybody else, how can you safely have freedom of the press where sources are worried about being discovered by the government because there's ubiquitous surveillance? So we created lots of different channels where sources could safely contact us, including what's called something called Secure Drop, which is a way that a source can anonymously send us documents or other information where we don't even know the identity of that source. And even if the government tells us we're required to turn it over, technologically, we just can't access it. We were one of the few at the time that had Secure Drop. I think now many dozens of media outlets around the world are using it in the age of Trump. We have other communication devices like Signal that we encourage sources to use. We publish online guides for how sources can safely communicate with us without being detected. So yeah, that has been a really high priority of the Intercept for a long time.